she saw that, you know, developmentally I was still where I was, you know, as a very young child emotionally. And we have worked together now for, I guess, almost 3 years, and she has been the one, and she won't take all the credit, and we've done the work together. But you know, I have made tremendous progress with her. And does that mean that, you know, that I don't still struggle, that I don't still have bad days? Absolutely not. I do still struggle, and I don't know if one ever is cured of an eating disorder. Some people do say that they're cured. I say that I'm in recovery, and I think I'll always be in recovery. I don't think I'll ever be recovered. But the things that I've learned have been really amazing. You know, how I live my life now compared to how I used to live my life is dramatically different. Eating disorders are so black and white, and anyone that you talk to will talk about this black and white, and it's, you know, I'm either good or bad, I'm fat or thin, food is good or bad. It's just always the two opposites. It's always those two extremes. And I sort of coined this phrase for myself, and I call it sort of like my tagline for myself, but I call it living in the color. And what that means is it's sort of like the spectrum. On the opposite ends you have, you know, black and white, but in the middle is where all the color is. And that's where life is. That's where living is, because there is no life at those two extremes. Because you can never attain that, because those ends are almost like you're looking for perfection, which does not exist. So this living in the color is about waxing and waning with life, and you know, going with the flow and finding some freedom, and about, you know, some days eating chocolate cake because, you know what, it tastes really good, and then not jumping to the other extreme and saying, oh, now I ate chocolate cake, now I have to go and, you know, exercise for 3 hours. That's the eating disorder mind. But living in the color is about, yep, I ate chocolate cake, it tasted really good. That was yesterday, this is today. Life goes on, the sun still came up, I could still fit into my pants. So, you know, those are some of the things that I've learned. And it's exciting. It's exciting to have a life, not have your mind consumed with, you know, what I should eat, shouldn't eat, can't eat, won't eat, will eat, what I want to eat, how much can I eat. That is so draining. It takes so much time. Like, an eating disorder is, in a sense, it's like a full-time job. And I already have a full-time job, so I really don't have time for 2 full-time jobs. But, you know, I have had the privilege to speak with and meet with now, you know, a lot of people who might still be struggling, who are in a different place than I am. And through support groups with the Eating Disorder Coalition, you know, that have been put together, and hear other people's stories. And that has helped me a lot too, because since I've never been in a treatment facility, and I've only been on one-on-one counseling, I've never met other people and really had that kind of dialogue and actually learned from their stories and saw myself in their stories. And I can't tell you how that has helped me. And it's amazing to me the resilience of the people that I've met that have struggled with eating disorders, and many of them for as many years as I have. I used to think that, you know, that I was just going to be meeting with young people in their 20s, and I know there are certainly a lot of people in their 20s, but in these groups, there are a lot of people, you know, my age, in their 40s, in their 50s, even older, and people who have struggled for a long time. But the one thing that we all seem to have in common is really just an unrelenting desire to live, because that's what it is that brings us to these support groups and what brings us into the doors of therapy for help. is just this desire that we know that our lives can be better, and that's the one thing that I always knew. My therapist said to me, well, geez, you certainly, you had every right to give up. You had every right to give up a long time ago. And I said, but I always knew my life could be better. I always knew that there was more for me than this. I always knew that my Creator, who I call God, wanted more for me than to be struggling so much and to be in so much pain, physical and emotional pain. I always knew that wasn't the life I was supposed to have. So I guess, again, where I am today is in a place of living in that color, and that means that some days are good and some days are more difficult. But I've also learned some things along the way of other ways to cope, because typically it's anxiety that causes me to run for food, either to binge on it or restrict on it. But I've learned other ways to deal with anxiety, and it's funny because over the years I've read, I don't know, maybe 8 million self-help books about eating disorders, looked at many workbooks, and I always remember the question of, make a list of some of the other things you could do besides eating. So it was like, the number one thing always seemed to be take a bath. Well, I don't really like to take baths, or read a book, or go for a walk, or listen to music. So I'd write all these things down, and then when I found myself into trouble, I would sometimes open that list and look at it and go, that's great, but none of those things give me what it is that binging gives me. So, but what I have found now is that as I have worked with my therapist and actually have emotionally matured, I actually have made a list, and it doesn't have take a bath because, again, I don't like baths. But it has things like, the first thing is yoga, and yoga is one of those things for me that has helped me tremendously. And it helps me tremendously to deal with uncomfortable situations, because sometimes in yoga you are in a pose that you have to hold for a few moments, and it may not be totally comfortable, but you know it's going to end. And it's just like life. Uncomfortable situations come along, and yoga has taught me that those are going to end. So it's funny because now I have a list of some things that can actually give me more than what binging can give me, or even restricting can give me. And one of the other things is I went back to my artwork. In college I used to do a lot of art, and actually majored in it as well. And I let it go years ago. I just didn't have time for it. And I was reading a book about eating disorders, and there was some talk about how for an eating disorder person, what they have to do is you can't just take away the eating disorder, because what happens is I'm left without an identity, because this eating disorder has been my identity since I've been 12 or 13 years old. So you can't just rip that away from me and not give me anything, because that's what I identify with. So I had to recreate my identity. One of the ways to do that is to get back into your passions and find out what your passions are, because for a lot of us, our passion became, the eating disorder. And so I sat with that for a while to think about what are the things that I've given up, things that I really enjoyed, and art was the first thing that came to me. And it's one of the things that when I'm doing it, it becomes quite meditative. And I'm not going to be in a gallery or anything soon, but it's really therapeutic for me to actually just draw or whatever it is I choose to do, or anything with my hands. So I'm proud to say that now there are actually things on my list that that can be a way to cope without using food.
That's great. Yeah.